What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and today I'll be modeling this bathroom. In this video, I'll show you the references I used, the style, the lighting, and the colors I used to bring it all together. I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today, so without further delay, let's get into it. Alright, so like always with these videos, I'm going to start out with our references today. With these references here, this is more of a stylized look. I actually noticed this style kind of trending a little bit more on a few different social media sites, but this style is called Pink Glam. It's a little bit more popular when it comes to kind of like the 80s Penthouse look. And so what's really unique with all four of these references here is you usually have some sort of vegetation, almost like either of a fern or a palm tree or something of that nature, and then you'll have a unique or vibrant metal color, typically some sort of a chrome or gold, or even like a rose gold as well too. So with the rising popularity of this look in general, I'm going to kind of try my own hand at this with a bathroom that I'll be modeling today. So primarily with this bathroom, I use all four of these as just general references to kind of get the same look and the same vibe. And then with this one on the top left here, this is the one I pretty much use as our primary reference here. And I try to take a lot of the really cool aspects of this as far as the mirrors and the windows, and making sure that we have some sort of really cool looking tub in the foreground, and then in the background you do see that additional tub as well. So I wanted to do something similar to that. I also wanted to make sure that I brought in some different vegetation into the shot as well too. So with this bathroom today, we're going to try and model it the same sort of way as some of these references here, and we're going to try to use the same sort of color spectrum as well as far as the palettes that was used for all four of these references here. So there's just going to be a lot of vibrant pinks, purples, oranges, and then some neutral colors as well too. So, but other than that, that's pretty much it for this section. Let's get into modeling. Alright, so jumping into Cinema4d, I try to make sure that I grab our perspective initially. So I'm just going to bring in a Redshift camera here and then just kind of adjust it to the scene here. Then I'm going to bring in a cube. This cube is going to be our floor. So I'm just going to just stretch this cube out to our reference here as far as our primary reference goes. And so I'm just going to kind of create the same sort of shape that the bathroom is here. And so I'm just going to kind of turn this and play around with it just to kind of adjust it to the specific scene. Next, I'm going to bring in another cube, and this cube is going to establish our ceiling. And then I'm just going to rename these quickly. And then I'm just going to rename these quickly. And then I'm just adjusting it here slightly. Next up, I'll bring in another cube here. And so I'm just going to kind of turn this cube at an angle, stretch it out, and then really try to get the same sort of look here. And then I'm going to throw in a bool for these two cubes here. and then immediately you see that our corner is kind of cut off here. And so looking at our reference, we do have a room that is somewhat of a unique shape that you traditionally don't see in a lot of homes pretty much anymore at all. And so I'm essentially just kind of rounding out this space here, and then what I'm going to do is just kind of copy and paste our bool here just so our ceiling has the same sort of shape in general. And so that'll be good because it'll line up properly here. So cool. And so most of the time here, what I'm going to do is just really just play around with it because I want to get the initial look right. And so I'm just trying to establish a good foundation for our scene, just because with our perspective, I feel that that will make or break the scene depending on how we kind of set this up originally. So I'm just going to kind of take my time here and really adjust the scene to this reference here. All right, so now that we got that situated, what I'm going to do is just bring in another cube, and then this cube here is going to be our pillars. And so again, if you look at our reference here, we do have a lot of different pillars going around the room that kind of outlines the windows here. And so I'm just going to take this cube and just kind of place it on each side here, kind of similar to our reference as far as where these pillars are lining up in this room here. So I'm just going to kind of adjust it to our room and then extend this up here, and then make sure that it's both touching the ceiling and the floor here. And so that's looking pretty good. So I'll just kind of grab a few more of these and kind of place them around the scene here. And really with this, I want to try and take as much time to be precise, because again, this is kind of your foundation or the skeleton of the scene. And so I feel that if your skeleton or your foundation is off, then it can kind of either ruin the perspective or just not give you that look that you're really going for. And so initially here, I'm just going to try and take as much time as I can to really make sure that everything is lining up properly and everything is right where I want it. All right, so next up, what I'm going to do is just copy and paste. And then I'm just going to bring this cube down here, and then this is going to be the foundation of this windowsill here. So I'm just going to kind of line it up to this room here. Again, just trying to make it as correct as possible so we have a nice start to our project here. And then really with this, making sure that it's lining up to the floor correctly is how we're gonna have a little bit more of a realistic look here. So I'm just going to take a few seconds and adjust this here, and then we'll do the same thing on the other sides as well too. And with this, when you are changing your angles here, you can always select the shift key, and that's going to give you increments of 5 as well. So if you need a specific angle, you can always hit the shift key, and that will kind of give you in degrees of 5 here. So whenever you're doing some sort of either architecture or you're dealing with a lot of different angles, shift will be helpful with making sure that you are getting those angles exactly right. And then with this here, I'm just trying to make sure that all of our windows are somewhat equal here. I want to make sure that each window seems somewhat consistent with the other window as far as the size goes. And so again, I'm just kind of taking that extra time to really kind of map out these cubes here to make sure that they do us well when it comes to our final render, where we can have something that looks similar to the reference and also have something that makes sense when it comes to how the windows look, where, you know, one isn't 80% of the other size of the window. And so but essentially I'm just trying to line it up where each window here is going to be even with the neighboring one. Cool. So we got everything set up here and they look somewhat consistent with each other. And so this is a good foundation to start out with. Really with this, if you look at the reference, you do have this really cool looking outside porch area. And so I'm just going to kind of create the same thing by copy and pasting our floor here, just because that's going to give us the same shape very quickly. And then I'm just going to adjust it to our perspective here. So really I'm trying to hop in and out of our perspective camera, which is our Redshift camera here. And then I'm just going to kind of change it and alter it depending on what looks right. And then we're also using our references as well. That does have a little porch or just like a balcony area out here. So again, I'm just playing around with it so it looks like the correct perspective here, and it doesn't look off at all. So really I'm just kind of playing around with this bool and where this is located to really make sure that we get it to actually look right here. So Cool. So that looks pretty good so far. I think that will be good for now. So what I'm going to do is just kind of copy and paste this cube here, and really with this cube I'm going to try to outline poles here. So if you look at the reference, they do have this railing that is outside of this balcony area, and so with this I'm just trying to recreate the same look. So with this one I'm just going to stretch out the cube a little bit just to get the correct proportions here when it comes to what the railing looks like and even the glass outside. And so with this, again, I'll be hopping in and out of our perspective camera just to make sure that we are achieving that same look that we're going for. And then to again make this simple and easy, I'm just going to copy and paste and rotate this here. I'm just going to stretch it out to make it really kind of flush upon the actual balcony here. And so that is looking pretty good so far. I don't think I'll do much with this other side just because with our camera and our perspective, that's not going to be in the shots as far as what's going on in the back right side. And so since the camera's not going to be looking at it, I don't think we'll pay too much attention to it, but just in case we want to throw in a few other shots, I'll just copy and paste the same cube here, and then I'll just line it up to this far side. But really with this, our primary goal is our initial perspective here. So and depending on if we want different renders or we need different angles, I can always kind of dress up the scene or change the scene. But I think for right now, we are looking for our initial perspective or our initial shots. And so I'm just going to kind of leave that there. And then if we do make a few renders in the future, we'll just, again, adjust it. So. Now, if we look at our railing here, it is a little off. So what I'm going to do is just kind of play with these a little bit and make sure they are aligned with each other and they're kind of flush with each other as well as far as the corners go. Cool, so next up, I'm going to bring in a cylinder here. And I'm just going to rotate it and then just kind of adjust it to our glass here. So these cubes are going to be our glass, and then the cylinder is going to be our railing. And so really with this, I'm just going to kind of adjust our cylinder to our glass here, and then I'm just going to increase the segments to make sure that it is fully fully a circle, and you know, it doesn't have any bumpy edges. And so I'm just going to stretch out the cylinder here and then make it the same length as this glass here, and then I'll be doing the same thing on these other sides as well too. And if you look at our reference again, there is a double layer when it comes to our railing here. And so again, just to make it easy, I'm just going to copy and paste the railing here and then just kind of adjust the height. So it is a little bit higher than our initial railing. And then what I'm going to do is with our windows as well, I'm just going to copy and paste and really reduce the size down. So we have our glass, our railing, glass again, and then railing as well. So cool. Cool, so next up, I'm going to bring in a cube here, and then with this cube, I'm just going to try and outline the back wall area or where the vanity is going to be. And so with this, I'll kind of hop in between both the default camera and our Redshift camera to make sure that we kind of get the same sort of perspective that we're looking at. And so immediately there, you can see it's not in our view. And then as we adjust it, it is in view here. So I'll just kind of adjust this cube here to kind of represent the same look as our reference. And really with this, I'm trying to make that mirror and vanity area with this cube. And so I'm just laying out the foundation of this here. Next up, I'm going to bring in a capsule here, and then with this capsule, this is going to be the top part of our vanity glass area over here. And then I'm just going to kind of slice this in half and increase some of these segments here. And then I'm just going to select this and put this on the top of our glass area here. Cool. And with this, of course, I'm working off of the reference, and so it has a really cool looking angle here. It has this kind of sharp angle that kind of goes around, and so I'm just trying to achieve that same look here. And really with this, I'm just gonna play with it a little bit. I can even bring in another cube and bring in a bool as well, just to make sure that this roundness at the top really isn't showing, and so we can kind of adjust our shape a little bit more using our bool here. So and then like I said, I'll bring in the bool here and then adjust the order, and so we don't have that curviness that comes with the capsule. We can kind of control that a little bit more. So cool, so that looks pretty good. And then we don't need to worry about the top there because that's just not going to be within view. But really we can just adjust our capsule here and the cube to kind of give us the look that we're looking for. And then hopping back into our perspective, that looks okay. We can always just kind of rotate it, because if you look at our reference, the camera is sitting slightly at a different angle. So I'm just going to adjust it here real quick, and then kind of adjust our wall as well too. Cool, so that looks a little bit better here. So next up, again, if we look at our reference, it's kind of hard to see because it is pretty much all a mirror here, but they do have this column area that does have mirrors on it. So I'm just going to bring in a cube here and then just kind of shrink it down and then adjust it to this wall here. And really we're just trying to create that same look as our reference here, with having both the mirrors, the vanity, and then this kind of like the center column here. So cool, that looks good so far, but I think the top portion is a little small, so I'm just going to adjust our capsule here just to make sure that this is a good size. And so I'll just kind of adjust the height and width here. And again, I'm just kind of taking my time with this to kind of create the same look. And then if you look very close to the mirrors, you can see that the mirrors are sectioned off into specific sections. And so it's not just one mirror, but it's kind of several like different squares put together. And so I'm actually going to kind of take this here and reduce down the size. And then I'm just going to kind of adjust it to kind of what I see in the reference. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste here. And there's another square piece that's off to this right side. And then again, just copy and paste. And then this portion here, again, if you look close at our reference, there's specific areas that are between each mirror. And so I'm just going to make sure that each square here is actually touching that specific area and making sure that it actually lines up so it looks proper when we are looking at this. So again, to make this look right, I'm just going to adjust this spacing portion. And if you look close to our reference, you can kind of see that there are, I don't know if it is a bar of some sort, but it's definitely separating each one of the mirrors. And so I think that's probably used to prevent the mirrors from really colliding against each other, or if it is a little bit more warm within the bathroom, the mirrors don't kind of expand or break. And so with this, I'm going to kind of bring in this, I would imagine, a rubber divider of some sort, or something that actually holds the mirrors as well too. I should actually probably look up and see what these are actually used for, but I do see them in the reference, so I'm going to represent them in this render here as well too. So with this, really, I'm just using a few different cubes to kind of separate out our mirror here, and then I'm just going to kind of continue to adjust the mirror to make sure that this looks right. But I think for right now, it's looking pretty good. And then we can always adjust it when we start to add in our materials. Next up, I'm going to go to the Redshift library here. They do have some pretty cool tub assets here. So just to make things a little bit easier for us, I'm going to bring in a few of these assets. And then also too, I'm going to bring in a few materials here as well. And initially with these materials, I'm just going to kind of bring them in, see how they look, and then we can always adjust it later if it's not the same look that we're going for. But really, whenever doing this, make sure to grab a whole bunch of materials that you're kind of either attracted to or you kind of like what they look like, and then you can always apply them and adjust them later on. So I'm just going to bring in a few of those here and kind of see a little bit later what that looks like. And then with our vanity, we really don't need to bring in a vanity. We can kind of do that ourselves here. So I'm just going to bring in a cube and kind of block off that same area that the vanity would be in. And so I'm just going to kind of adjust this here. And with this, again, just kind of adjusting the angle to make sure that it is properly against this mirror here. And then also it looks right as far as being on the ground and the size as well. Cool, so that looks pretty good so far. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste our cube here and then just shrink this down, and then I'm just going to use this cube as somewhat of a outline for our cabinets here on our vanity. And so I'll just do the same thing, just kind of copy and paste and adjust it to make it look like a similar look to our reference with how the cabinets are looking. And really with these cabinets, they are very kind of simple and plain, and so that kind of goes with the same style as, you know, what you see in a lot of these references. It's a lot of plain mutes or just like pastel colors, and so we're just trying to create that same look here with a basic cabinet here. And then with this, I'll just kind of copy and paste these and just adjust it down the vanity here. And real quick, to kind of see the different layers, what I'm going to do is just apply a random color to one of our layers here so we can kind of see what it looks like a little bit better. Of course, we can always kind of change our shading when it comes to our materials here, but sometimes I like to throw in some sort of color or material to some of our either assets or our cube that kind of help identify the different layers or the different looks that I'm creating with this, without having to pull up the Redshift render view and then having to throw in some lights to see what it actually looks like. I can actually do something in here to kind of give me a better understanding of what the asset is going to look like without having to either go through that process or render it out. So Cool, so next up I have to make the countertop to our vanity here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this cube. And with this cube here, I'm just going to turn on the fillet portion, and that's going to round out some of those edges here to our vanity. And then we'll just kind of adjust it to make sure that it is sitting on top, but it's not clipping the other portions of our cube here. And so I'm just going to kind of look around here and adjust it to make sure that the counter is actually sitting on top of this vanity here. And then I'm just going to kind of adjust these cubes here that are going to be our cabinets. I'm just going to kind of redesign the look here just because they're not totally in the proper proportion. So I'm just going to kind of adjust them here just to get a somewhat even look and something that is a little bit more similar to our reference. And then what we could do as well too is we can go into the asset library here and bring in some sort of person. And so I'm just going to bring in this lady here to help me get the scaling right. And so I'm just going to adjust some of these cabinets here and our furniture in general just to make sure that we do have some proper scaling going on when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And so sometimes I'll bring in some sort of figure to help me adjust the scene to make sure that our scaling is solid here. So and then right now we necessarily don't need this tub, and so what I'm going to do is just kind of turn off our tub here so that's not within view, and so really we can kind of focus on these cabinets a little bit more. So again, I'm just going to hop into our default camera here, and I'm just going to kind of readjust our cabinets here. And again, make the same sort of shape that we originally had, but again, something that is a little bit more to scale and somewhat a little bit more even as well too. So I think when it comes to more realistic renders, like anything to do with architecture or something that the human eye is familiar with, having your proportions correct is essential because you can tell immediately if something is fake. Of course, with this style, it is very much stylized, and so I would imagine a lot of people would know that this is fake, but whenever working on any sort of architecture at all or anything that is within any sort of realism that you're dealing with, you want to make sure that your scaling is right to make sure that it looks a lot more realistic. And so whenever I try to do any sort of rooms that aren't stylized, I try to really make sure that my proportions are correct and the scaling is correct, because if you can kind of control those or manage those, you can have a better overall render at the end of the day, so it looks a lot more realistic than it is. So Cool. So now that we have the vanity done, I'm just going to get rid of our lady here. Next up, what I'm going to do is bring back our tub here, and I'm just going to select our tub and rotate it here. And with this tub, I'm going to make it similar to our reference where it's kind of facing outwards. And so I'm just going to adjust the tub, and then I'm just going to kind of set the tub in the back corner area here, similar to our reference. And then again, I'm just going to kind of make sure that this is looking right. And yeah, it looks pretty good so far as like our scale goes and the direction it's looking at. So next up, we need to bring in another tub here. So I'm just going to hop into the asset library here and see if we can find some sort of regal tub for our bathroom here. And this one is probably the closest one we're going to get to our actual reference here. Of course, we can always dress it up and change it, but I think this one will probably be the best one for now, unless any of these other ones are looking good. Yeah, we'll actually use this one instead. And then adjust it to our floor. And then just scale it up a little bit. Cool, so that looks pretty good. Now, if you look at our reference, it does have this unique setup around the tub here. And so I'm just going to try and recreate that with a few different cubes here. And so I'm just going to turn on fillet for this, just to kind of round off this edge here. And then I'm just going to copy and paste another cube here. And then with this as well, I'll bring in a bin deformer, and with this bin deformer, I'm just going to kind of adjust it so this cube somewhat wraps around this tub here and has somewhat of a curvature angle to it. And that looks pretty good there. And then again, if you look at our reference, this, I don't know what to call it, but like this stone or like porcelain fixture around the tub here, I'm just going to kind of copy and paste a few of these cubes here and just kind of play around with the bin deformer to kind of create that same look here. And then I'm just going to kind of adjust them and rotate them a bit and really try to line them up as much as possible here to our reference. And again, just copy and paste, kind of rotate them. Really with the reference too, what's pretty cool about having the reference is if you are ever in a situation where someone comes to you and they say, hey, I want you to recreate this, having a reference or just practicing with a reference in general will help you out when you come into those situations, because you feel a lot more confident that you can recreate something because you've already done it yourself before multiple times. So even if it's not the same thing that you've done before, you have worked off of a reference before, so you're naturally a little bit more comfortable when it comes to working off of something or trying to copy something or enhance off of another image. So definitely having a reference as well, not just helping you with kind of creating the scene, but also helping you out when it comes to something like that where it's almost like a reference helps you trace a little bit. You can kind of trace out what it looks like. And so again, if someone comes up to you and needs you to recreate something, you'll go into that situation a lot more confident versus not having to deal with references on a normal basis. And then with this, again, I'm just going to really just copy and paste what we made here and then use this on the other side as well too. And so we kind of created the same thing as our references here. And then I'm just going to go to all of our bin deformers and turn them off here. And then with that, it will take away a lot of these purple lines that were made within the viewport here. And yeah, that's looking pretty good so far. So we're on a roll. All right, so next up, I'm going to bring in a disc, and with this disc, this is going to be the water in the tub here. And so I'm just going to adjust the disc here to the tub to make sure that it does have somewhat of a water look to it. And so we can kind of adjust it and hop back into our Redshift camera and really adjust our disc to make sure that that water is somewhat within view, similar to our reference as well. But that looks pretty good so far. What I'm going to do next is we're gonna hop into Quixel Bridge and see if we can find some fun assets to play with. All right, so hopping into Quixel Bridge, what I'm going to do is just look around for some sort of pot or vase here to put some of our plants. Again, as I was saying in the reference section, we're going to bring in a few different plants to kind of create that same sort of look and feel. And so I'm just going to find some sort of vase here. This wooden pot looks pretty good, so I'll probably bring this one in here as well. And then off camera, I'll just kind of shop around for a few different plants and decide which ones I want to bring in, and we'll go from there. Cool, so I was able to find these here, brought them in. They are discolored, but I'm just going to change that real quick. Cool, so we got these here. I'm just going to adjust some of these plants here to make them a little bit more to scale. And then I'm just going to copy and paste and adjust this to our perspective here. And so I'm just going to kind of push these off to the side and rotate them. So hopping back into our perspective, you do see our plants. We'll just kind of move that a little bit more. Cool, that looks pretty good so far, but it's blocking the mirror section. So I'm just going to rotate them a little bit more. Let's see, let's bring them down a little bit. And yeah, that looks pretty good so far. So we have one plant in the foreground and one in the background, same as our tubs here as well. So next up, if you look at our reference, it has a lot of different recess lights. And so we're just going to create the same effect here. So I'm just going to bring in a cylinder here, and then actually what I'm going to do is just actually pull this cylinder out here. And then I'm just going to increase the segment so it is a full circle without edges. I'm going to press C to make it editable. And I'm just going to select all of this and press delete. Cool. And then I'm going to bring in a area light here and just move this area light over to our recess light here. I'm going to rotate it. And then I'm just going to change our area light into a disc and really try to line it up to our recess light here, and then just kind of shrink this down. And then as you can see here, it looks like we did delete another portion we did not intend to. So I'm just going to bring in another cylinder and just kind of repeat the process and make sure that I don't delete the wrong portion here. So again, just lining up the cylinder, and then I'm just going to adjust it to scale here. And then really with these dots, I'm gonna try and get the outside of this here. Cool. And then I'm just going to press C, make that editable, delete that bottom portion. And then with our lights, I'm gonna make the light visible, drop it down a little bit more, throw in a null, name it lights, and then throw both the lights and the cylinder into our null there. And then now I can go and adjust this to our ceiling. I'm just going to go in and turn off our light there, and then just reduce down the size of the recess light. And hopping into our camera, I'm just going to adjust our light here and reduce down the size. And then adjust out the light just slightly to make sure that it is actually shining onto our room here. Now I'm just going to copy and paste this, and then I'm just going to make several other lights similar to our reference here, kind of scattered throughout the room. And then looking at our reference again, we do have another one near the back side here, so I'm just going to kind of adjust that, and then adjust this other light as well too. Cool, so that looks pretty good so far. Next up, we'll play around with this plant here. So we gotta make our pot a little bit more to scale here, and then we're just going to adjust it underneath this plant here. So I'm just going to put this underneath the plant here, just kind of adjust the scale as well. And then I'm just going to take this plant and just move it up slightly. And then just kind of reduce down the size here. Wow, this pot is supporting so much of this plant. This is like the atlas of pots. But anyways, we'll bring in a area light here. What I'll do is just adjust this, and really what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to find a really cool looking PNG of some sort of cityscape, and so I'm just going to kind of use our area light as a cool way to create a backdrop here. I'm going to reduce down the intensity to 2, bring up the render view here, press play, and you can see our room right away here. Select visible, and then as I load in our PNG here, you see a city. And with our plants coming in from Quixel Bridge, I'm just going to turn off luminance. That's going to give us the actual color here. And then next up, what I'll do is just kind of play around with this backlighting color a little bit, just to kind of create a good look. And then I'll hop back in here for you guys. Cool, so this is what I came up with. I kind of played around with a few different lights here. Really, I was playing around with the lights of our city, and then I did copy and paste another light as well behind our city, and just made it somewhat of more of an orange tone here, and that's how we got this look. But really with this, I took an extra about 20-30 minutes off camera to just kind of play around with it to make sure that I got us a good look that was similar to our references, but I didn't necessarily record it because it was just a process of me kind of playing around with it and creating a reasonably good look here. And so this is what I came out with, and it was relatively easy. Like I said, I just got another area light here, adjusted the color a little bit, and it's kind of projecting through the city here, and so it's kind of creating this nice little ambiance look that we have here. So, and then if you look at our reference, there is another portion to this tub here, so I'm just going to recreate that and throw in this color on the top here as well. And cool, that's looking pretty good so far. And then also off camera as well, I did apply our floor tiles, and so we have our floor tiles as well. That took me a good another 10-15 minutes to really play around with it, but again, just super simple. Found what I liked and then just applied it to the floor here. Next up, I'm going to jump into Grayscale Gorilla, and I'm just going to kind of bring in a few different colors here. And I'm just going to use this chrome color to kind of use this as our railing here. And then I'm just going to apply it to all of these cylinders. So next I'm going to take the same color as what we have on the tub here and apply it to the edge of our room here. Next, I'm going to go into the Redshift library here. And then I'm going to bring in this color here of that material between the mirrors. And I'm just going to kind of put that there. And you can kind of see the immediate effect within the Redshift render view. Next up, I'm going to bring in a mirror color. And then really, I'm just going to apply that to our mirrors here. And so immediately you kind of see that one of our lights is really illuminating on our mirror here. So we'll have to adjust that. So what I'll do is go into our area light here and just kind of figure out which one is kind of creating this look here. I believe it's this one here, but I'm just going to exclude almost all of these cubes from the lights so the light's not bouncing off of our mirror here. So I'm going to drop down these cubes here and see if there's any changes. And no changes there, so it must be one of these other area lights. Again, same process here. There we go. And then let me do the same thing for this mirror. Okay, that's the rest of it there. Cool. So let me actually delete that because that is fine there. And then I'm just going to adjust our column here. Okay, so we got a lot of the lighting proper. What I need to do is just bring in another area light as almost like a stage light almost to kind of help illuminate the room a little bit more just because it is a little bit darker. And so I'm just going to kind of play around with this light here as far as the exposure and the color goes to kind of help pump a little bit more light into the scene. Now, the Redshift library does have a few different mirror options, and so I'll just kind of see which mirror works the best as far as the scene goes. Next up, I need some sort of glass material for our windows. And so I'm just going to select this one. And I'm applying it here. And so immediately you can see the refractions in the glass. And a weird light is hitting some of our cylinders here, so what I'm going to do is do a similar process to our mirrors here and just regulate how this light is hitting some of the cylinders here to make sure that there isn't any sort of major shininess that is coming off of the railing here. Cool, so that looks good so far. Next up, I need to find some sort of color for our vanity here. So again, I'm trying to find something that is somewhat simple, but again, maybe some sort of pastel color as well. So I'll just start to apply some color to the vanity here. And then I'll just go into the node editor here and then just kind of play around with the color. And that looks pretty good just because it kind of matches the environment, it matches the lights, and then at the same time it matches the same sort of material that is found within our references here as well too. So I'm just going to go into the node editor again and then just make an adjustment here. Just because we don't need shininess when it comes to this, it's very almost flat, and so I want to kind of recreate that as well too. And I'm going to turn off the reflection in total. And yeah, that's going to take care of that shininess of it, so cool. And then if you look at the reference again, it actually looks like the vanity is like suspended in air. And so we're just going to kind of create that same thing here. I'm just going to adjust the size of our vanity and make sure that it is kind of hovering off of the ground here. Cool, so that looks pretty good. I'll hop back into the Redshift library here, and I'm just going to select this tile texture here, and then I'm going to apply it to our vanity here. And again, I'm just going to go back into the node editor and just adjust how this material acts so it's a little bit less shiny. Now again, I'm just gonna reset this vanity here just to make sure it kind of lines up similar to our reference. Again, these cabinets are very simple, but I'm having the hardest time on them. So really, I'm just going to try and adjust them as much as possible. And then that looks pretty good, so I'll just copy and paste that here, and let's hope this looks right. Cool, so that looks that looks better. Cool, so that looks good. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this here, and then I'm going to set up the windows here. So I'm just going to line this up to where the windows are supposed to be. Same thing with each side here. And then I'm just going to take off the material and add in our glass texture here. And immediately you can kind of see a difference when it comes to our lighting. I'm going to hop back into the Redshift library here. We're going to try and check out a different glass if possible. Cool, so let's see how this one looks. Okay, so let me try another one here. And that one looks a lot better. So what I'm going to do is just apply that same glass texture to some of our other glass here. Our lighting is somewhat flat here, so I'm just going to adjust some of our lighting here just to see if we can kind of create something that's a little bit more vibrant. And then I'm just going to kind of change the color of the city area here. And then just bring in a area light. And with this area light, I'm going to try and pump in a little bit more purple into the scene. And then another area light as well. and I'm going to kind of adjust this to the ceiling here. And by kind of pressing this against the ceiling and kind of playing around with the intensity, it'll kind of push out that light to the surrounding bathroom here. And it kind of gives us that pink, purple, vibrant look within our room here. So yeah, that looks a lot better and a lot less flat. So we get kind of the lighting within the room, the lighting from the outside, we get the lighting from the recessed lights as well. So yeah, that looks pretty good so far. I'm just going to kind of adjust these plants here to our camera. And then if you look at our references, a lot of the plants are within the scene, but they're somewhat dark, and that's a really great contrast to the vibrant pastel colors that is present within each one of these references. So what I'm going to do is just take each one of these plant assets, kind of make sure that the light really isn't hitting these as much, making these plants a little bit darker, since there's not really any sort of light interacting with it. Cool. So that looks pretty good. And then with this other area light in the back, we can also kind of help control what the area is going to look like. And that's nice because it kind of matches the outside a little bit more, where it is a little bit more darker within the bathroom. Like the bathroom isn't too light within the room, but the outside is kind of illuminating what's on the inside here. So that's a little bit better than what we had, but you can always kind of play around with it and see what you like the most. We are missing some of these recessed lights over the vanity here, and so you do have a significant light source over the vanity, so we're just going to kind of create that same thing here. And then lastly here, what I'm going to do is just bring in a sink asset from our library here. And then I'm just going to kind of place this onto our vanity. You really don't need a ton of detail when it comes to this, because again, you really don't need to mess with something that you really can't see within the camera. So just adjusting this sink to the vanity would be fine. And then of course, if you do move the camera or change your perspective, you'll always have to kind of adjust for that. But for this certain perspective, this looks more than fine here. So but other than that, that's pretty much it for this bathroom here. You can always kind of play around with it and alter it depending on what you want. But as far as this scene here, I think this is pretty good. Of course, you could probably, invest a lot of hours to really tweak it and enhance it to make it look pretty good, but I think for the time allotted or the time we invested into this so far, it looks pretty good for what it is. So I really enjoyed this one. This one was a lot of fun. Let's hop into the wrap-up section and go over this. All right, so wrapping up the video here, this one was pretty interesting. This wasn't a theme I was really aware of until a few a few people brought it to my attention here, and so the look is pretty interesting. This 80s pink glam penthouse look, it seems to pick up a lot of traction lately. So again, with this, I'm trying to kind of recreate that same sort of look and the same sort of vibe. Really, with this, I think the architecture and the overall palette is what's going to kind of help you create that same look. I think both the furniture and the color, or just the palette in general, is going to be very important when it comes to this. So if you ever are trying to go for a look like this, definitely look into the type of furniture that is present within some of these scenes, and then also be aware of the colors as well. And if you can knock both of those out of the park, you could probably get a pretty good render, especially if you want to kind of take your renders into some sort of post software program. You can kind of enhance it and change it a little bit more in post, but for setting it up in Cinema 4D and be a little bit more limited to your computer's specifications, you can always kind of just play around with it here. Like I said, I had a lot of fun with this one. Let me know what you guys think of this. If you want to see more stuff like this, if you want me to continue to model something, or if you want to see completely something else, just let me know. Shoot it down in the comment section and we'll try and get something in there for you. So like I said, I had a lot of fun with this one. This one was pretty cool to kind of dive into, but other than that, that's the end of the video. You guys have a good rest of your day. I'll see you on the next one.